Louis Riddick sees Shedeur Sanders shining. Man, that was a tongue twister. Louis Riddick sees Shedeur Sanders shining. Try and say that 5 times fast. With the New Orleans Saints, ladies and gentlemen, the face of the franchise, yet another video today. This is the second video today. I don't know if you're new to the program. We're dropping minimum 2 videos a day. Every day I'm doing more videos than Jenna Jameson in 1998. All right. Don't Google that if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's a family channel. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been talking about Shedeur a lot. We've been digesting this whole situation because it is historic. It is potentially historic for the New Orleans Saints to take a quarterback in the first round. We're talking about Archie Manning being the last one in 1971. This would draw a line in the sand for Kellen Moore. Think about how important this would be. Kellen Moore would be putting his entire reputation, his entire first stint as a head coach, on the shoulders of Shedeur Sanders. He would be saying, this is the guy that I foresee taking me to the promised land. So I really want to hit on 2 things during this video. And I'm going to say the first one up front because I don't want to get lost in translation. I've been hearing a whole lot of talk in the comment section or people just asking me or wherever saying that drafting Shedeur would be a mistake because you have to deal with the daddy drama of Dion. And you have to deal with Dion getting involved and meddling. And I find it interesting because let's just think about the worst possible situation, right? Let's just paint Dion in the worst light. If Dion was in the spotlight the entire time through the draft process, if Dion was trying to finagle his way and dictate where Shedeur would get drafted, imagine demanding certain teams draft him, certain teams don't draft him. Then imagine we get to draft night, and imagine the Tennessee Titans say, you know what? We want Shedeur Sanders. We think he should be the first overall pick in the draft. Imagine that. Now imagine Dion stomps his foot on the stage and says, nope, my son ain't playing there. Imagine Dion stealing that moment and demanding the Titans trade him. And then imagine a couple hours later, the Titans do. The Titans trade Shedeur right there after 45 minutes after selecting him the first overall pick. That would be the worst case scenario. That would be the most demanding, most distracting, most just spotlight hogging, drama, baggage filled situation you can think of. True or false? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured out by now, that's Archie Manning. Okay? That's exactly what happened with Eli. And you can copy/paste when Peyton was a free agent. All right? This is certainly not the first father drama that we've seen during the draft. And as far as father drama goes, as far as baggage goes, as far as spotlight and Hollywood and all that, the cameras and the pomp and the circumstance, as far as all that goes, there really hasn't been any drama with Dion. There hasn't been any drama with Shedeur. And I think it is funny that the same people who are like, don't take Shedeur because of the drama, wait and draft Arch. My, oh, my, oh, my, oh, my, how time heals all wounds, ladies and gentlemen.
Shedeur Sanders, if I said he will fall out of the top 10 picks, is that ridiculous?
Yeah, I think that is ridiculous. Look, I think we are definitely overthinking this. We are picking this guy apart. We're combing through him with a fine-tooth comb in a way that really we haven't seen, another quarterback undergo in terms of scrutiny. And
I don't believe that. I mean, every quarterback prospect, especially in the top 10, gets that fine-tooth comb. That is no doubt about it.
I really do believe that. Now, that's not hyperbole. I think we are really overthinking it with this young man. I think the floor for him is 9. I think it would very much so be a great marriage between he and the Saints at 9. I think his camp would be very, very happy if that happened. And when you're talking about a guy who had basically adjusted completion percentage about right at 80% this year, played behind no line, had no running game in 2 years at Colorado, I think you need to keep in context exactly what he overcame and still had some of the stats that he had.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is kind of the perfect marriage. I mean, for the Saints, you get a guy who incredibly accurate. You get a guy who's played a lot of football. You get I don't want to say finished product, but you get a pretty polished prospect. You're not getting a guy who's played, a season and a half of football or a season of football, and you're wondering exactly what he's going to look like. You pretty much know what you're getting. Shedeur does have some of the traits that you want in a rookie, rookie prospect. Like I said, that accuracy. You're not like Jalen Milroe. On the other hand, there's all these intangibles and all this, like, well, what if he can do this? What if he can do that? But he can't do the routine stuff. He can't do the short to intermediate throws. He can't do all that. Whereas Shedeur can do that. The question is, can he continue to progress, right? So from the Saints standpoint, you're getting a guy who seemingly the floor is pretty high and has all the tools, touted prospect, whatever, just because of how the board's falling to you at 9, a lot of value, pot odds are in your favor. From Shedeur's side, you go to a situation where you can chill. You're not going to the Giants where you got to start on day 1. You're not going to the Browns where you're playing for the Browns. You get to go to New Orleans, sit behind Derek Carr for a year, learn, no pressure on you at all to play. Oh, and completely new coaching staff, completely new scheme, completely new system. You are learning at the exact same time as the rest of the team. So you're not coming into a Sean Payton system where you're playing catch up to some 10-year, 15-year established system. You're hitting the ground running with Kellen Moore. Now, here's the next part of this that I want to talk about. Here's the algorithm for all of you. I want you to think about this. You can answer in the comments below, but also feel free to, after the video, after you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff, send to your friends and family. Feel free to think about it. What quarterback in the NFL, what level of play would Shedeur Sanders have to reach in order to validate the pick? Okay, so let's just pretend you have Shedeur for 2 contracts. So let's say 8 years. Okay, let's just pick a number. It could be 7, could be whatever. We'll just say 8. What level of productivity would he have to have in order for you to be like, yeah, you take that at the 9th overall pick? And I've really thought about this. I think Shedeur, if you're looking at, and I've heard a lot of people say, well, you can't draft a quarterback prospect who doesn't have elite traits. To a certain extent, I agree. Okay, if you are projecting them to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or whoever, you probably do need to have those elite traits. But what if you are drafting a quarterback and you're looking at them as, well, maybe he can be Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott doesn't have elite traits. Well, maybe he can be Geno Smith. Geno Smith doesn't have elite traits. Well, maybe he can be Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield doesn't have elite traits. Okay, I think Dak is a really good example of the kind of quarterback that I'm talking about. If you told teams going into a draft that blank prospect was Dak Prescott, and you would get Dak Prescott's career, Dak Prescott's capabilities, his talent, his whatever, his progression, you got a carbon copy of it. Not exactly the results, because that's kind of team-based, but just Dak. He's going first overall. Dak doesn't have the elite traits. Dak is not an MVP. Dak is not right now he's not a Super Bowl playoff winning kind of guy. But he is a quarterback that can get you there from the eyes of a franchise. Like, he is a franchise quarterback. He is good, sometimes great, rarely elite, but sometimes he's in that conversation. If you are forecasting Shedeur as, can he be Dak? Can he be that? And I was going to say Russell Wilson, but Russell, when he was younger, had a little bit more mobility than Shedeur. Dak is a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, but still, like, you're never going to get a perfect comp. I think if you take Tua and Dak, kind of marry them together, you're going to get Shedeur. If that is who you are getting and who you are graded out and who you are forecasting this player to be, I think you have to take him at 9. Now, if you don't have that grade on him, if you don't think that highly of him, if you're not looking at him as that kind of prospect, then I think you pass. But if Kellen Moore looks at Shedeur Sanders and says he can be Dak Prescott, he can be blank, whatever comp you want to give it, at 9, the value is too great. The value is too great to get your guy, get your franchise quarterback, and get off of this carousel of every single year in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, taking Garrett Grayson and Ian Book and Jake Hayner and Spencer Rattler and whoever else. You get off of that. And even if Shedeur gives you a Dak-type result where, yeah, you make the playoffs a few times, you're winning 12 games, 13 games, yeah, you throw for a lot of yards, okay, you never really reached the Super Bowl, you never really reached the peak, it's still worth it. It's still worth it at 9 to take that player. At 1, at 2, you probably do need to be taking a quarterback that can get over that hump. And he's going past where Dak Prescott is. And he's going into that MVP world. He's going into that All-Pro and that Super Bowl, the conference championship. You are pushing. But at 9, I don't want to say you settle, but at 9, it makes more sense to say, if we can get an above average to great quarterback for the next blank amount of years, you got to do it.
It's funny you mentioned the Saints at 9 because that's exactly where Mel Kiper Jr. put him in his most recent mock draft, going the 9th pick overall to New Orleans. Swagoo, would you like that fit? Shedeur Sanders with the Saints, Derek Carr's there one more year?
I would love that fit. And when you start thinking about the situation in New Orleans, Kellen Moore had a quarterback by the name of Dak Prescott who was taken in the 4th round from Mississippi State. Albeit more athletic than Shedeur, but as far as getting rid of the ball, the time and the accuracy, being able to be a clutch player, Shedeur has shown all of that. This is 2 programs that this young man has went to and elevated both of those programs and put him in a situation when no one was talking about him to everyone talking about him. And I get that Prime was the coach and I understand all of that. But Lewis was at games, called games at Colorado. At some point, there has to be some substance to what was going on in Jackson State and Colorado.
Yeah.
And you know who was in the center of that substance? Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. It would be crazy if this dude does not get drafted in the top 10. 1, because he plays the position at a high level, and 2, because a lot of organizations need a damn quarterback. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think it.
Okay, now this is the other part I wanted to talk about, all right, in my philosophical discussion today. Now, the counterpoint, the counter argument is, okay, if he is good to great, if he can be that prospect, if he is whatever comp, why are teams that are so quarterback starved in the Cleveland Browns and in the New York Giants, why are they willing to pass? Why are they willing to seemingly not even give it a think? If that's the case, then why? And that is an absolutely valid question. And I think you have to absolutely ask yourself that. The Browns are as quarterback needy gets. The Giants, up until Russell and Jameis, about as quarterback needy as it gets. Both know we could take Shedeur if we wanted to. So you do have to question, all right, why the hell did the Browns, why would they rather have their quarterback situation, Kenny Pickett, who the hell ever else? You don't even want to say Deshaun Watson. Why would they be willing to go in that direction? Why would the Giants be willing to pay Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston? Why wouldn't they just draft this guy? And that's absolutely worth a conversation. And no doubt about it, does need to be addressed, because a lot of what I'm saying, those teams know that. Those teams know everything that we're talking about. They've seen the tape. They've seen the pro day. They can take them if they want them. And right now, it seems like that's not the case. Now, maybe the counter-argument to the counter-argument, counterception, maybe the counterception is that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are too good to pass up. And they're too good of prospects to pass up. And, it's just best player on the board. Shedeur just doesn't meet that level. I don't know if I buy that because of how important quarterback is how important the position is in the NFL. That is absolutely worth debating and talking about. And if you're the Saints front office, that's what you have to decide over the next 2 weeks. It is exactly 2 weeks until the NFL draft. So in the next 2 weeks, that's what they have to decide. 1, is this quarterback good enough to be our Dak Prescott, our whoever. Could he even be better? Do they even believe he has a higher ceiling? Could he be our Dak Prescott? Just for the conversation, we'll just keep it at that. Can he be our Dak Prescott? That's the first part. Because they have to have a high enough grade on him, right? Like, if they don't have a high enough grade on him, there's no point in the conversation's moot. All right? The other side of it is, well, what's wrong with him? What are we not seeing? What are the Giants seeing? What are the Browns seeing? What are the Jets seeing? What are these teams that could get him and aren't? What are they seeing? The Jets are more willing to give Justin Fields $40 million. Why? You know, I mean, the Jets is a bit of a stretch because it's 7. It's like you never know what's going to happen. Just get your guy if you can get him. But certainly the Browns, certainly the Giants would have a shot at him. So if you're the Saints, is it like, am I just the smartest one in the room? Am I seeing something that they're not seeing? Or are they seeing something that I'm not seeing? Saints have 2 weeks. 2 weeks to decide that. Okay? Now, there's also, you could also argue like you'd rather draft him, find out, than not draft him and find out that way. A la Lamar Jackson, a la Patrick Mahomes, where he ends up slipping away and then you see what takes place, right? I have spent so much time on this because Shedeur Sanders, or the possibility of Shedeur Sanders, it could be anyone. But the idea of the Saints drafting a quarterback in 9th overall is such a franchise-defining moment and such an important moment. I feel like I have to be fully enveloped in it to understand it, see every side of it, to give you my analysis and to give you what I think what should happen and would happen. And I have yet to find a way to talk myself out of this. I've yet to find a way to get off of the idea of drafting Shedeur Sanders if he's there at 9. The only way that I've been able to do it is when I talk out the scenario of Ashton Genty or someone like that sliding, where it's probably as much of an impact in today's NFL to have an Ashton Genty, you know, like the way the running backs are now. But if the board falls how I think it'll fall, and you can get a top 10, top 12. We're talking potential. I'm not talking first year. I'm not talking you walk in the first year, you're a top 10 quarterback. But like I said, if you can get Dak Prescott, you have to. You have to. You know, if you can get C.J. Stroud or whoever, like that mid-tier, you know, that's the thing that everyone talks about. It's always like you got to get your franchise quarterback, and that somehow equates to MVP. It somehow equates to whatever. Not always. Not always. You know, sometimes the franchise guy is Dak. You know, it is some gray area tier where you're not an MVP, but you are one of the better quarterbacks. You can win any game. You are a stabilizer for the franchise. You know, a lot of people in the comments, I think, are going to say, well, it sounds like Derek Carr. And you could argue, you know, Carr had his injury. Wasn't the same after the injury. I don't know. You know, like, yeah, it's hard to say, but maybe even, you know, like maybe even if you look at Carr pre-injury and look at what he was for the Raiders, how good he was when he was getting MVP votes and led them to the playoffs before his leg. If you get that level of production, you probably do take that guy at 9, because I'll tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, you can't win in the NFL without a quarterback. So you either got to draft him or you got to sign him. All right? Look at the Falcons. Okay? Gave Kirk, whatever, $180 million for 9 games and nothing. Okay? You got to have one. This 4th round, 5th round draft a no-name, nothing prospect and hope that he works out. It's not working. It's not working. This is potentially our best chance at getting that kind of guy. And we have 2 weeks, so who the hell knows, this could change. But from where I'm sitting, I think you got to take it.
It would be ridiculous if he didn't go in the top 10.
I think one point that I want to make about him is this. Fit is absolutely critical for him as far as the makeup of the coaching staff and the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach in particular in this manner. He needs to go somewhere where it's really a collaborative type of relationship between he and the coach. He's someone who likes to give input. He's someone who likes to ask why. He's someone that likes to be involved. I don't think it'd be very good for you to draft this young man if you just want to pound into him. This is how we do it. I don't really need to have your input. I don't really care about what you think. I talk to their coaches out there. I talk to Pat Shurmur. This young man really is invested and pours into the game, and he wants to have that kind of relationship with the coaches who coach him. And I think Kellen Moore, considering the fact that, look, Swagoo already mentioned, he coached Dak Prescott. He also coached Jalen Hurts. He has been a guy who's coached a lot of different types of quarterbacks, a lot of different types of offenses. Yep. I could definitely see Shedeur matching up very well with him in New Orleans. And on top of the fact that I think he would just like living in that part of the country and playing in front of that fan base.
Do I have time to ask Lou a question?
Sure. Absolutely.
Lou, you think what is being said about Shedeur playing for NFL coaches while in college? Is that something that is
I mean, that's a good point, too. You know, like, you're seeing a lot more of it now. I mean, like at Ohio State, Chip Kelly was there. You know, so I think that's less of a – I mean, it's definitely good. It's certainly good. I mean, you can see all the Michigan players who came out from under Jim Harbaugh, that they were way more polished, way more ready, way more understanding of that kind of – those concepts and whatnot. So there is something to that for sure.
Discussed while this process is going on that he's had guys on that staff in Colorado – who coached in the pros and maybe a little bit more validity to the information they giving these GMs and people that's asking about Shedeur?
Back on Get Up, time for a segment.
Okay, never mind. I mean, yeah, and, you know, I talked about this before, but, like, Colorado was absolute trash bag program. And last year, Colorado tied to be, they lost the tiebreaker, but they tied with Arizona State to be in the Big 12 championship. Like, they could have been in the Big 12 championship. He was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Like, there was legitimate success there in college in a not great situation. You know, so you got to kind of give him a, you know, tip of the cap for that too. But 14 days away. 14 days. And the New Orleans Saints could be sitting there looking at the next franchise guy. Whether he's a bust or not, you know, who the hell knows? I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a bust, and people would have bet their life that he would have worked out. He's one of the highest rated quarterback prospects of all time. So, you know, it's not guaranteeing anything. But when you weigh, I also like how people are like, nah, man, it's just all hype. It's like, brother, it's the draft. The whole thing is hype. Literally every pick is built on hype. Nothing is for sure. No one knows anything. You're just trying to sift through and figure out what's real, what's not real, and hope that you can make something happen when they get into the pros. The entire thing is hype. But it is crazy where the Saints have been kind of rudderless as far as like a direction since Breeze and Peyton left. And this would at least tell fans, this is where we're going. This is the direction we're headed. And just speaking from a fan, that would be refreshing to not say, all right, what fifth round quarterback are we going to take? You know, all right, maybe it's this guy's turn. Let's rotate quarterbacks here. Let's do this. It would be kind of nice to have some kind of just, okay, Kellen Moore, this guy's the head coach. He's doing this. Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback. He's doing this. We're moving this way. I don't know. This is something that we're going to talk about, think about, examine all the way up to that night. Ladies and gentlemen, get on down in the comments below. I want to hear you popping off down there. I'll be replying. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.